This is the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Where did the summer go? Summer days. My favorite days. The beach, the ocean, the mountains, hiking, being outside every single day, and reading. Yes, reading on the beach. Now we're going to go right into fall and football season. And you know what? It's time for you to publish that book you've always wanted to write before Christmas. That'll be your new goal. That way you can give it away for Christmas presents. Am I right, Bob? You can give it away for Christmas presents. So it amazes me sometimes how a theme develops while I'm doing the interviews, for the show every week. And this week, there's a recurring theme, writing your book to appeal to a certain group of people and then tapping into that group of people to sell your book. So tonight you're going to hear a lot about the process of writing your book and getting it done no matter how busy you are, and then getting it out there. Our first author on the line is Dr. Mustafa Buxwala. He's a medical oncologist, not a guy with a lot of time. He made an amazing discovery about his state of mind and how it was affecting his body, and he wanted to write about it so bad, he spent a half an hour a day writing for 6 months just to get this book done, and it's called You Are Not Your Mind.
Yeah, you are not your mind.
What do you mean by that?
For many years, I was caught up in my mind, and I was dependent on caffeine, so the mind was controlling me. And during that time, I did a lot of reading, a lot of research to find out why was the mind behaving that way. And then eventually, I gave up caffeine, and then I had control on my mind. In the process of that, I read many, many books, and this is how I formed my feeling that you are not your mind. Your mind is just a tool that you have to use.
So are you saying that our minds control us and we don't even realize it?
Yeah, we don't even realize it. It puts us on autopilot, and it puts us in a rut, and then we just do things reflexively without thinking. We make decisions, or we make opinions about people, or we make decisions about life without even thinking about what we are doing.
And caffeine is a major culprit here?
About 6 years ago, I gave up caffeine, and it took about 3-4 years after giving up caffeine to be fully what I can be. But the last 10-15 years when I was drinking caffeine, I was fighting obsession and paranoia and depression quite a bit. And during that time, I just kept my work. So I had my work was still top grade. I took care of my family. Nobody ever knew that I was depressed. But inside of me, I knew it. And to kind of overcome that, I read a lot of books, I did yoga, I would try different types of herbal medications, and something for 3 months and another thing for 3 months. But eventually, serendipitously, just one day, I gave up caffeine. We were on vacation, and I told my wife, this last cup of tea I will drink. I gave up caffeine, and then about 3-4 months after that, the depression went away and the obsession went away. The mind got clearer. So I think, the drug was putting me out of control. And as a person, I'm hyper. That is just my inbuilt nature.
Do you think people should give up caffeine?
I don't think it is for everybody. But when I did my research, I kind of, looked up Google and all that. And the kind of conclusion that I came to was about 25% of the population can be affected adversely with caffeine. So there's a significant number of people that may be under the effects of caffeine and taking the antidepressant medications and feeling of body aches and depression and all that. And it might be caffeine. Because for me, the mind, my whole body, mind cleared up. It took about 2 months after I stopped cold turkey. For about 2 weeks, I had intense headaches, the worst headaches of my life. Thirst, hunger, headache, drowsiness. So I'm sure that, it was doing something in the brain.
Yeah, well, I've heard that you practically go through withdrawals. I mean, caffeine's like nicotine.
And for me, it's been a blessing. It's been a new life for me. And, I used that book, to that book's course, I added my experience and my other reading into things that have helped me survive that period. And now all these things are positive for me. Yoga and all those things have become like a positive effect in life now.
Do you prescribe a way of life for people to try out, or
I don't. I'm an oncologist. Okay, I'm a cancer doctor. So most of my patients are sick patients, and significant number of them are in the end stages of their life. And some of them are cured, and then some are hematology patients that are healthy young people. So then I kind of discuss with them, about life, what to do, what not to do, and have faith, do some exercise, do some yoga, and they're kind of. But I'm basically a doctor. I take care of people. I prescribe chemotherapy. I administer chemotherapy.
I would think that would make you depressed, dealing with people at the end stages of their lives.
Yeah,
But
well, that is what happened. Whenever I was depressed, I would talk to my psychiatrist friends. That's what they would tell me. Oh, Dr. Baxala, you're taking care of all these patients, and it's normal for you to be depressed. But inside of me, I knew this is not right. There's something wrong. And now for the last 6 years, I do the same job, but I'm not depressed a single day. So this positive, I'm always able to, even if my dying patients, either they give me energy or I'm able to give them energy so that, they can have their last few months or years of life, good life. I kind of prescribe a way of life, healthy living, eat properly, do yoga. I think yoga is one of the best forms of exercise. That's what my belief is. So I tell them about yoga. I tell them to yoga, read books.
is this the first book you've ever written?
This is the first book I've written, yes. This was an attempt. And the thing is that what I wanted to do, that there were things that had helped me. And my basic goal was that at least people that are close to me, my family and some of my patients, I wanted them to have a feeling about what I thought. And it was very difficult to communicate with them just like that. If I just told them, they wouldn't listen. But now it's a published book. So all my relatives have read it, my children have read it, my patients have read it, my employees have read it. I have a corporation, we have about 50 employees. So, my employees have read it. So before they would not, what is Dr. Baxala saying? But now, because it's a published book, it makes a big difference.
And they have a better understanding of who you are.
Yeah, and they know who I am. They know who I am. You can look at the reviews on the Amazon. They have reviews, and some of the reviews are even from my employees. So those reviews are there, and I kind of think that what I wrote is to be read one page a day. Maybe take a month, 2 months to read it, and I'm sure it will change your life. I'm 100% positive. And some of my patients have bought 10 and 15 copies, and they've given it to their families and friends.
Well, you didn't have to go far to find people who would be interested in buying your book, did you? And you know what? For you, it was about giving up coffee, right? And along with some other life changes that really made the difference. So might be something you might want to try. So now we go from a medical oncologist to a working mother of 4 who somehow found the time to get her book written. R.J. Stokely is on the line, and she wrote Destini's Regret. In Italian, Destini means destiny. And this is a book about following your heart.
It's about a young woman that has relationships with these gentlemen that are friends with her. Some of them she pursues, some of them she sits back to see what's going on. Just relationships that she's, coming of age, early 20s. She's not sure, if it's passion, if it's just lust, if it's, a long-term love type of relationship. And she's just kind of sorting through it all with all these different guys that she has different types of relationships with. One of them is like a high school crush that she's always had. Another one, they're all kind of in the same group. But at the same time, there's a couple outsiders that have kind of guided her through making certain decisions. It's kind of intertwined in a sense, but it's still, I think a lot of people can relate to it. Women, and they're going through that time of their lives where they encounter, men that they're not sure of. They hold back. They might not ask questions that they really want to know about certain things. And if those guys have kind of feelings for her as well, what she's trying to figure out is she's got all these guys with different elements. Maybe one is the bad boy, one is the joking guy, one is the one that's really, a down to earth, lovable guy. And she's trying to figure out which of them might actually she should maybe pursue, and which ones she kind of hesitates to pursue, maybe thinking that they might be out of her league, or but at the same time she gets sidetracked because something happens in her relationships with one of them, and so she's skittish, and she's like, I went down that road with him, I'm afraid to get hurt again. Just I guess a matter of choice, and then you don't know who to ask what anymore, who to believe anymore. So you just get scared off and don't ask anymore.
What do you want readers to come away with?
Don't hold back. If you do care about somebody, you should ask them. Come straight out and tell them how you feel, and don't worry about what other people have told you about the person. Trust your heart, follow your instincts, and maybe you might put your heart out on the line and get hurt in the end, but at least you don't regret it. You've given it a chance.
Why is that so hard for us to do? Like just put it out there, follow your gut, follow your heart, and maybe you won't get the answer that you want, but at least you can say you put it out there.
Right. You gave it a shot. You don't go through life wondering what if.
So is this kind of like your search to figure out what kind of man you want to end up with?
Well, I mean, if you read the story, you could tell she's obviously made a mistake, and it's going to be one that she's going to regret for the rest of her life. So, moving on, is she ever going to find that true love again? It's questionable. I guess that's going to have to happen in part 2.
Oh, is there another one?
Well, I thought about it. I mean, this book took me 15 years to write, so until I finally found a publisher and started really focusing on it. I did it, late night, here, a chapter here, a paragraph here, there. It just took me a very long time to write. I never thought of myself as a writer. I never really pursued it. I just had a story to tell. So, eventually I just all got down and I finished it. And then I got encouraged and found a publisher that thought it was a good enough story to publish, and I went with it.
Did you let other people read it? Is that how you got encouragement?
I had an old friend come across that I just decided, let him read it and see what he thinks. He doesn't know any of these people. He's in no way, attached to anyone and wouldn't read into it too much. And so he read it and he did like it. And he said, yeah, there were the 3 elements that I look for in a book. It made me laugh, it made me cry, and it gave me the chills. So he's like, I think it's definitely a good book. I think you should go ahead and feel comfortable submitting it. He gave me a couple pointers, do a little character building on the main character. The ending could use a little bit more. So little things like that. So I spent a couple of days refining it, and I submitted it, and they liked it. So I was surprised. The Page was the first one I submitted it to, and they accepted it. And I said, I had talked to other authors that I've come across, and they've told me what they went through with bigger publishing companies and others that were self-published titles, and it just seems so much work, and it seems like such a long progress that so many steps to get to that point. So when I found out Page can help me lead, go through the editing process and get everything done, to me it seemed like, as a mom, a working mother of 4 children, like I needed all the help I could get. It took me 15 years to write. I wasn't going to waste 2-3 years to find a publisher that would do it all for me. So
working mom, you have 4 kids. Did you find your true love?
Well, that's questionable, but and I don't regret anything, that I've done since. But there's always that person in the back of my mind. So I dedicated the book to John, and I made him a promise. Like I said, that's it. I'm going to give it 16 years, and I'm going to do it. So 16 has always been my lucky number. So it came close to that time. And I was like, you know what? I got stuck. I kind of got writer's block for a while. It came to the chapter where it was like the climax of the book, and I found it hard to write. So it took a weekend. I had my mom watch the kids, and I kind of cleared my mind, went to a quiet place, and I just, sat down and really concentrated on the last 3 chapters of the book, or 4 chapters. And I just, his birthday's coming up. I need to have it done. So I banged out, those 3 chapters, and then I spent, a few more months, editing it myself, and then eventually, like I said, I came in contact with this one old friend, and he said, just do it, don't wait anymore. So I did.
So you dedicated it to John, and John's birthday was coming up?
Yeah, well, It was the anniversary of his birthday, and then also the anniversary of his death the month after.
RJ, I'm so sorry. But, here is another example of someone with the determination to write what she needed to write, and in this case, to help get through a painful period in her life, and she made the time to do it. RJ's hoping to do some book signings this fall out here on the East Coast, so look for her. All right, the music tells me it is time for a quick break, and we will be right back with more of the Page Publishing Book Club. Don't you go anywhere.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. And on the line, we have Kyle Lintz. He wrote a book called Meghera.
It is about these explorers that go into the forests of Bhutan to locate the legend of the Yeti, or the Meghera, as it is referred to there.
And your inspiration?
Probably about 13 years ago, I saw a documentary on the History Channel, or Discovery Channel, one of the two. And it was about these scientists actually looking for evidence for the abominable snowman. And I thought that it was just fascinating watching these people setting up and trying to get actual evidence. And it struck an idea in my head as to, if these creatures actually did exist or do exist, how come there is no tangible evidence or anything that can, substantiate their existence? So the idea was just coming up with the scientists looking for it and then sort of explaining how these creatures were able to keep themselves hidden, for all these centuries. Even if there is the carcass of one of their own, they're able to remove it.
Without it ever being detected, right? Okay. What is Meghera?
Meghera, it was a word I came across when I was actually researching the book. It actually referred to in Asian culture as the Yeti. It's what they called the Yeti there. So I thought that was actually a more interesting word than saying Yeti or abominable snowman, even though that's more of something that, people in our Western culture, I should say, understand more. But I just liked that name. I thought that name really stuck.
Yeah, I like it too. I do. I like it too. It sounds very mystical.
Thank you.
So is this the start of, several books, or does it begin and end with just this one?
The story ends with this particular book, but I do have ideas for more stories. I mean, I do leave it open at the end for it to continue on. At this time, I don't have a solid idea for the next book. I've been already working on. I'm working on a third book actually at this time. So I'm waiting till I get done with those, and then I may return to that story again.
Have you always been a writer?
I always write short stories for years. It was always sort of something I did. And then I would write screenplays and things like that, and I would never really do much with them, but just kind of shelf them. And then I just decided one day to pull one of those screenplays out and then turn it into a book, which was Meghera.
When did you write the screenplay?
Yeah, it was at the end of 2001 I wrote it. Probably sat for a good 10 years before I picked it back up and started to translate it into a novel. It was weird because every time I'd be somewhere, I'd drive in my car or I'd be sitting somewhere in my office, whatever, ideas for the book, the story just kept rolling through my head, and I knew I had to go back and at some point finish it. So I actually, actually getting it and sitting down, it has actually expunged all that stuff from my head. So I've actually gotten, able to put it in my, into the book and not have to constantly be thinking about it.
So many people say that it just eats you alive, and you can't
Very
stop
much
thinking
so.
about it.
Very much so. And I didn't even know what I would do with it once I finished it. I just had to get it out of my head and put it somewhere. And once I knew it was finished, I felt really good about it. And then I had it sitting around for a few years. A couple friends that I knew wanted to read it, so I let them read it. And then I just decided to, go ahead and publish it. And
you just landed a page?
I was actually looking for literary agents, and I was going through different places, and I was looking at self-publishing a variety of different methods. And I was actually flipping through my TV, and a commercial came on for Page. So I actually wrote down their information, went on the website, and I really liked what I was reading about it and reading about other authors that had gone through it. So I actually contacted them, and I spoke with one of the representatives, gave me all the information I needed, and it sounded really, really good. And I liked the contract. Contract was clear and easy to to do. There wasn't any fine print that had to be worried about. It was really easy to work with.
You know what's interesting, Kyle, is most people write a book and then a screenplay. You did it the other way around.
Oddly enough, yes, I did. Because I really like focusing on dialogue and focusing on characters. And then when I decided to go into, a prose novel, it was like, okay, now I have to get into the heads of these characters. What are they thinking at this point? What are they doing? And then really describe it and explain it and then get into a lot more detail. And that started to get more interesting to me, that I was getting more involved into the characters than I ever was when I wrote a screenplay. It seemed much more superficial and, simple when I was doing the screenplay, but getting into the prose was much more involved and much more detailed, which I really enjoyed that part of it.
That's it. So what do you do in real life?
I'm an associate professor. I teach at Mohawk Valley Community College up in Utica, New York.
So did you ever send any of your screenplays away or anything?
I never did. I talked about it, and I actually had worked on projects that were potentially being turned into stuff, but never really got anywhere further from some of this basic production process. But I always have difficulty giving away my stuff. I always kind of like to have a little bit of control, creative control over what I am creating, and that's why I kind of went towards self-publishing, because I knew I would be able to maintain the control over what I was, creating, and that was more appealing to me than just sending something off and then turning into something that was completely different from what I initially envisioned for it. So.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah.
Even if they find a publisher, first of all, it's really, really, really hard. But like the bigger publishers, they want a piece of you.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
Page basically puts it out there, and you keep whatever you get.
Right.
So, how are you getting this out? Are you making your students read it, or making it required reading?
I haven't yet, but actually, I've most of the people I know, I'm on Facebook, so all my friends have seen it, and they've been interested and asked questions about it. I do have friends that I know work in, entertainment business that I've sent copies to. So I've kind of pushed it out there to, at least let people know what it is. And I say, tell your friends when they see it or when they read it. So I hope a word of mouth will spread enough. I go to the local bookstores and libraries and stuff, and I just ask them, if they would be willing to carry copies of it. So I'm trying, it's mostly local footwork, but I'm trying to get it out there. I'm hoping to, do some events or things in the future to sort of promote it a little bit more.
Go where some good information there on process, and an interesting process going from screenplay to novel. Most people do it the other way around. And, also Kyle described that feeling where you just have to unload your thoughts before they drive you crazy. And speaking of crazy, our next author was a writer and an editor in a newsroom, making him uniquely qualified to write The Newsroom Confessions. What do we want to know about newsrooms, Bob?
What's to know about newsrooms is they're a lot more bizarre than people realize, and they're a lot funnier. And if you work in a newsroom, you know what I'm talking about. It's just an exciting place, but I think the bizarreness of the newsroom is really what stands out.
Is this like a WKRP Cincinnati, New York style?
If I say so myself, only funnier, because you know what, they really never totally captured the newsroom if you've actually been in one. I mean, it was good, but and unfortunately, the nerdy guy was the news guy, and I don't think that many news people are that nerdy. But like Les Nesmith, was that his name? He was like the nerdy guy, and all the DJs were like the cool guys. Sometimes it's the other way around.
I guess we have to tell people, Bob, that you and I worked together in a newsroom, a couple years ago.
Right.
It was just
a couple.
Couple years ago. So we both know how nutty it can be. And I'm just wondering, do you have any stories that stand out?
I'm going to tell one story, but I didn't use that person's name. But I did one riff about how you could owe somebody money and you could put, let's say, $5 and tape it to a wall somewhere, and that person will come and pick it up, and nobody will ever take that money. But if you have food, you're at risk. So if you have, somebody will look in the refrigerator and ask you, is this yours? That sort of thing. So there was one woman who actually was nursing, and she pumped her milk, and she put it in the refrigerator, and another woman came there and put it in her tea. So that was one of the things that happened. So, of course, no names mentioned because we don't want to embarrass anybody.
Bob,
that's the kind of thing that happens.
You didn't tell that story.
I did tell that story. Are you going to hang up on me now?
No, but that's a story that I always tell. It's like, my breast milk was in a baby bottle. There were babies all over the bottle. And the woman who shall not be named came in and said, man, my tea, it tasted so sweet. And I realized, oh, no.
You're telling the story better than I did. You have to put that in your book.
The refrigerator. Remember what that refrigerator used to look like?
Well, that was crazy. Yeah, at that place. And what we had a news director who, because we weren't making any money back at this one, the radio station that one of them that I'm talking about. So he decided he was going to sell cookies, and he bought a cookie machine, but it was one of those flimsy, cheesy looking cookie machines. So we immediately. The first thing is we took a coat hanger and you open it up so you could flip from the bottom and remove all the cookies. And so eventually, he couldn't understand why he wasn't making a profit and all the cookies were gone. And then we started to feel sorry that we're going to damage his machine. So we actually broke into his office and stole the cookies out of the boxes that were in his office. So that's the kind of thing that goes on in a newsroom that you can't, everybody thinks about newsrooms and they think, Dan Rather or Walter Cronkite or Brinkley or whatever. And it's not like that at all. It's basically these freaks who are stealing food and doing all this off-the-wall stuff. So,
Bob, are there any stories about you actually covering news?
Oh, I had to cover news too. And there's one story. Actually, he was a Nazi. He was a guard in a prison camp, Sandhausen, one of the worst prison camps during World War II. So they were going to deport him, and he lived in Rockland County, where much of the book takes place. So I went with Rich Lamb, actually, from WCBS. We went to interview him because he was about to be deported, and we're thinking. What's he going to say? He's going to yell at us. He was going to, scream or deny the Holocaust or whatever he was going to do. But we get there, and this guy comes out in a walker, and he's really puny and bent over, and he's going, "Please leave me alone." And I was rolling my tape so I figured I could get the interview first. But all I had on tape was, "Please, I'm an old man. Please leave me alone." So can I use that tape? No, I could not use that tape. So I just did a straight voicer saying that he's waiting deportation and whatever, and that was it. So
I would have used that tape, Bob. I think I would have used that tape. Yeah,
I know that's why you actually got farther in the business than I did. But I didn't use the tape. So that was because everybody would have thought, wow, what a louse that Bob Lemulik is. How could he do that to that old man? Forgetting that 60 years earlier. This guy was a brutal person. Yeah, I did cover stories. Actually, there are a lot of stories in the book, but I didn't want the book to be story centric because a lot of these stories. People a lot of times they don't care about news even today. So to go back, X amount of years and talk about news stories from back then, I think would be kind of a tune out. So I did show how to cover stories. If you were going to go to college and learn how to do news, and actually I'm going to use this. I teach broadcast writing. I'm going to use this book in my classroom. I'll be shamelessly using this book. But everything you want to know about covering stories and how to write is actually in this book. So, it gives you how to run a news department, because these things really aren't just random. There are certain things that are important about learning how to use, run the place.
So you wrote a mandatory textbook for your broadcasting class.
Right. It's a mandatory textbook, and I'm going to go with a backpack going to other colleges and seeing if they'll also buy the book. That's it. It's either selling pots and pans over the summer or selling a book. So I may as well do that.
Yeah, that's one way to go. So have you gotten any feedback?
I actually have a webpage now called the newsroomconfessions.com, if anyone wants to go on there. That's the good news. The bad news is when I went on the internet to look up the Newsroom Confessions, I found that somebody's pirating my book and giving it away for free. I swear to God, somehow they got into this thing, and so I said, gee, the book must really be great if someone's going to pirate it. But anyway, so I did get some reviews, and I was surprised, some chief engineer at WAG at WAGA TV in Atlanta. Lemulik is a skilled wordsmith. Every word in the book is true. Fran Schneider from WCBS, she said, this is one of the most hilarious books ever. I swear that I read it 3 times already. Steve Roy, remember him from LTW, Light FM? Bob can be hysterically self-deprecating. He is indeed an icon, which is really, it's crazy.
Wow, I'm interviewing an icon. I had no idea, Bob.
You never knew that. Oh, yeah, what's her name? Claire Stevens. She was at the Z100 Morning Zoo. She wrote, this is a terrific read. Bob's humor and writing style makes this really fun. I especially love reading about all the people I knew and worked with back when I first started in radio. So it's really kind of funny like that. I mean, because these are people I respect. It's not like, not that I don't respect everybody, but I mean, these names jump out and I said, wow, it's really pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, if you send me an autographed copy, I'll be glad to give you a glowing review.
Oh, that would be great.
I'll read it first, okay? I'll read it first.
Yeah, right. That'll be a good thing. Where would I send it?
I'll tell you when we get off the air, all right, Bob? Everything you ever wanted to know about working in a newsroom but never even thought to ask. Newsroom Confessions. That is all the time we have for tonight. Thanks to this week's authors and, of course, to you for hanging out with us tonight. Come back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club right here on 710 WOR. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Have a great weekend.